Welcome to the Patrick Coffin Show. Go to mypillow.com, straight off. Mypillow.com, get the Patrick Coffin Show discount. Before I say one more thing, it's not just pillows, it's sheets, it's doggy beds, it's pillows. It's travel-size pillows. That's what I wanted to say. The last thing that goes into my luggage is a miniature version of my bed pillow. So a little slice of foam. Hotel pillows are horrible. I think we can all agree. It's also bathrobes and sheets. Go to mypillow.com. My name, Patrick, is the code at checkout. That gives you the 66% off for my listeners. You're welcome in advance. Mike Lindell, a great guy. And I do love everything I've gotten from mypillow.com. It's been a blessing, especially the blessing of a good night's sleep. Okay, let's talk about transgenderism. Now we're going to use some circumlocutions because I don't want to get leader of the band. You know what I'm saying? So where we can, we'll speak as directly as possible, but we also want to be prudent, innocent as doves and wise as serpents. So I want to introduce Nancy Charles. A lot of you have seen her interviews elsewhere, talks that she's given. She was in and out of the lesbian LGBT lifestyle, and that kind of morphed into gender confusion and full-on transgender identity with the full name change. I've watched her grow as a communicator and telling her own story, which I'm sure is very difficult. And without further ado, Nancy Charles, welcome to the show.
Hi, Patrick. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a great honor.
I always wonder where I should hit the rewind button with stories like yours. Maybe a good place to start, just to get the more difficult things out of the way, is family of origin. Were you raised in a Christian home? Was there kind of trauma over time that led to this angling towards same-sex attraction? And like, what was your life like, say, under the age of 10?
Yeah, so, I mean, we were raised in church. Most people might know my brother, Joshua Charles. Him and I, when we share our stories about being younger, we have a much different experience, which is so interesting that two people can be raised in the same home and have a different experience. I think the biggest thing is I don't remember a lot of church early on. We were raised Protestant, though. Mm-hmm. Non-denominational. It felt like something, just a chore to have to do. But my relationship with church started to decay, I would say, rather early, because I had been exposed to things early on as a child, like sexual abuse, things like that. Nobody in our direct immediate family, but people within the family. Mm-hmm. And then, as you know, those things kind of progress and they fester, especially if they're not brought to the light. So that was definitely one aspect of it that I had no idea how much it would actually shift my life. But then, moving forward, I would say the big anchors of what led me down the trajectory, the early childhood would have probably been those things: being exposed to pornography too young, having sexual abuse in the background around 5 or 6 years old, and a repeated, nothing. It was something that happened several times. It wasn't like a one-off. So, with that kind of thing intertwined with this idea of like love, it's very confusing for a child. So I think that early on, and then as time went on, I think that the divorce of our parents very much, it was like the cherry on top. Because it's funny, so many people seem to have I had a lot of friends who, growing up, we were actually one of the few families that had parents together. And I never thought my parents would get divorced. That was just something they always said, and then here it is now. It's happening to us at right as I turned 18, right as I'm about to get my freedom.
18.
And just tore me right apart. So I would say those things probably made me very susceptible to fall into a rather vicious world. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was my extension of growing up with God.
Nowadays, if a girl has a crush on another girl, it's just labeled, oh, you're trans. The social contagion with Snapchat and Insta and the whole world of cyber digital madness doesn't allow kids to just be kids and go through phases. Did you feel crushing on girls more? Did you notice something different about yourself, say, before puberty hit?
Yeah, I remember my first crush on my third grade teacher. That was my first ever crush on a girl. But it wasn't like a crush in the way that you would imagine. We're talking, I'm still a child, so I don't have these thoughts yet about certain people. I just really remember very much being drawn to them. That kind of progressed. But I was also kids who kind of experience stuff early on in that realm, we'll say, for modesty's sake. Yeah. They don't just stop there. There's a lot of, unfortunately, it continues in the form of experimentation, and you don't really know. And a lot of it's very much a secret. So you learn to live in a secret from a very early age, and it's just normal to you. You know what I mean? So I think there
Mhm.
is, I mean, yeah, I held that secret in of like that attraction till I was like, gosh, I don't know the timeline exactly. I would have been like a year or two out of in college. You know what I mean? I fully planned my whole life to take that to the grave, but not because I really knew it was something that was deeply bad from a God standpoint. More that I was just deeply ashamed of it. And
The
yeah,
it being the same-sex attraction or the it being the abuse you suffered?
same sex attraction.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's an old saying, right? The devil loves secrets. So the
Hmm.
further down
Yeah.
you can cram that one and keep it out of the light, the more it
Right.
festers.
Yeah. Absolutely. And yeah, it did fester. So, I mean, now I would see it as more of like a conscious thing because, like God writes His law in our hearts. I think there's an aspect of that the devil played on to twist what was there. But I think it was good that I had a natural inclination to
Yep.
feel like something wasn't quite right. However, that being transformed into deep shame is what led to other things, and I think that's where the devil tries to attack us.
Hmm.
So.
Yeah. I call it the satanic am. I was blessed to interview the late great Dr. Joseph Nicolosi many times, who
Mm,
died an timely death of a horrible flu. But my gosh, probably 10 years ago.
wow.
His son, Dr. Joseph Jr., has taken
Mm,
up his work of reparative therapy. And Dr.
mm,
Nicolosi explained that by reparative therapy, he doesn't mean, hey, you're a Buick and I'm a mechanic, or I'm going to fix you because you need repair. It's that
right.
the same sex behavior is itself a repair attempt
Mm,
to fill in the emotional wound. Usually with men, it's the father. I don't know if that was the case with you and your dad, but it leads to
mm,
what I've just nicknamed the satanic am. As soon as you say the words am, like I am, the next word is going to be your identity. So if you go from, I
yes.
have this shameful secret, I felt these feelings, or I did these things, that's very different from committing in your mind, even
Mm,
forget giving a
mm.
public announcement of coming out. But if you say, I am lesbian, I am gay, I am trans, did you have that moment looking back where the behavior, the things you did, were internalized into an identity statement? I am X. Does that make sense?
Yeah, actually, it's funny. It's one of the first things I noticed after converting to Catholicism, and then I spent a lot of time in adoration. Like that was my lifeline in the beginning because I have a very interesting story. I accepted all the precepts of the church prior to knowing what any of them were. I knew like loosely, like there was sexual morality and things like that, but I had such a wild conversion that I didn't really. I knew God would help me understand later on, and one of the
Hmm.
first things He helped me understand was just how insidious that is to even label yourself. Like you don't even realize you're doing it because like we're so used to doing it. But the funny thing is it actually goes even deeper. My brother and I have talked about it a bunch where even in like we were raised in some Protestant circles where the confusion of the temptation is actually confused for the person. So like people would say there would be a lot of shame and the some of the Christian circles we were around just even having the temptation. And so from a very young age, actually, in a weird way, it was from Christian backgrounds that I learned that that was my identity because I was taught it was like in a weird flawed theology. It was like now as a Catholic, we know that concupiscence and like we have temptations that are not who we are. They're outside of us. We have a will and an intellect and we have, those faculties. But back then when you're told like, that just even having these feelings is sinful, then you have
Yeah.
no choice but to be the sin. And you're like,
Right.
how do I get out of this? I don't know. Like, so I'm just going to be the sin. I just am the sin. So that was always really difficult. So yeah, I took on that identity and not even realizing it. I just didn't know there was even a way out. And so, and also on top of that, you kind of feel like, well, everything's about feelings. So the closest thing you have to truth is how you feel about something.
Hmm.
Um, and that becomes a very hard thing to break later on. You really don't do it without God's grace. But yeah, that was one of the things He helped me see early on was just how deep that wound goes of identity. People call themselves
Hmm.
and they name themselves and they protect that self. You know.
Hmm. Jim Rohn famously said that you are the average of the five people you spend the most time with. Did you find that your crew of five changed and you went more and more into more kind of radical activist mode and you hung out with like-minded people and I don't know, lesbian bars, social events, that kind of thing, where the whole thing is
Yeah,
strengthened by your surroundings?
Yeah, so actually, I was never. I'm a weird kind of dog. I'm called what they would call like more of the old school lesbians at the time. I didn't. I
Sounds like
never
a
went to
grunge band.
Pride. I know,
Yeah.
right? I never went to like the Pride parades. I thought those were really stupid. I actually used to get in fights with my friends about it, but I had gay friends. Here's what happened to me. I never was attracted to like I didn't need specifically the gay community to tell me I was okay. I had no viable way to know what truth was, what objective good was. And so, and when you have somebody, a wound as deep as the feeling of needing to be loved, which is God given, to love and to be loved, it is a God given, but when distorted and just, we try to find it anywhere, like basically love is willing to take us in. And so you don't really care so much about where it's coming from. You just want it's like almost like a desperation just to feel seen. So you don't really kind of like to me, I used to joke, I've joked in the past that like I really didn't have a standard for what I was allowing in my life. And it was just like if you liked me, I'm going to accept you too. And so I ended up around a bunch of misfits who just wanted to be accepted the way I did. So a
Hmm.
lot of people approved of the gay lifestyle, but I had plenty of gay friends throughout my life, but I was never into the activism. I never went and fought for I think I went to one or two rallies, but more just out of curiosity. I'm
Yeah.
just not that wasn't really in my thing, but I also didn't vote on the laws or anything like that either. I just
Hmm.
didn't really care that much, to be honest, but maybe that's a
Hmm.
good thing.
Yeah. So you were apolitical. If you
Yeah, most of
if
my life,
someone
yeah.
if someone had come up to you and said that you're apathetic toward politics, you'd say, "Who cares?" Right?
Yeah, yeah. Spot on,
So I
yeah.
want to get to the good bits, the conversion
Yeah.
and Jesus Christ and healing and restoration. But I just want to take one more step toward along your path. You went from the lesbian thing to the trans thing
Yeah.
and identifying with masculinity and your kind of masculine identity. I know you have you name changed everything. Can you tell us more about how
Mhm.
that went into the transgender orbit, so to speak?
Yeah, that it was actually pretty interesting. So I would say for most of my life, it's almost as if I was being unknowingly prepared to take on the trans identity, and you can see little flickers of it throughout my whole life. So, for instance, when I was a lesbian, I always dressed very masculine. To me, masculinity was my shield. You have to
Hmm.
remember when your femininity is violated, when something so beautiful about like your innate, like your nature, the very nature of you, um, it goes as deep as God's design for you. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Is violated from a young age. Masculinity felt like a safe cloak. It felt like something to wrap myself up in that would make me feel like I had the power and I had the control. And that was another good thing God helped me sort of figure out as time went on. So here's the issue though. It's, as time went on, I had girlfriends, I had, relationships. A lot of the times though, that so disorder doesn't just stay like satisfied, it continues to disorder. It continues to fracture. So and that doesn't ever stop because there is no objective truth on that path. So it could get just darker and darker and darker until eventually like you end yourself or you're so lost that you whatever, whatever it may be. But so I was already in the masculine way and as one of the reasons that I didn't know it at the time, but as one of the reasons I was like shielding myself and I tried to I never wanted to be hurt for my femininity or rejected for my femininity again. And yes, to answer your previous question, there were some family wounds. I'm careful about bringing up anything, but our
Hmm.
family's doing a lot better these days. But absolutely, there's always a core family wound, and those run pretty deep as well. But naturally, no longer dressing a certain way felt like it was doing enough because it's kind of like a drug. Anytime you don't anchor yourself in truth, everything else is kind of just like a substance you try to fill the void.
Yep.
And eventually that's not going to work anymore. And if you're presented with something else, even if it's like a slow burn, for me, it was like, oh, I could feel more this way. Oh, and then you start to really identify with the thing. But it's a very painful place to be because, well, it's just not true. Anytime you write against truth that aggressively, you're going to be in a lot of pain because you're literally living in contradiction to God. You're
Hmm.
attacking the core of, yeah, it's it's not a good place to be. So I
Was
ended up
was the
naturally going towards that.
I really paid attention when you said that the masculinity felt like a cloak, almost like
Yeah.
people might remember Get Smart, the cone of silence, with the
Mm.
plastic thing that only two people can hear about. It sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but as I hear you retell that, your masculine mode of dress and masculine kind of affect felt like protection against the wound against your femininity, which does make a
Mhm.
kind of sense. Did that way of thinking carry momentum so that that external cloak of clothing and kind of mannerisms, for lack of a better word, became internalized, so that you began that am began to shift inward? I am a male. I'm a man. I'm masculine inside in my being. Did
Yeah.
that happen? Is that how the
I
dominance
never
fell?
believed. I think for some people, it can render differently. I mean, if you talk to anybody in the trans movement, they all have like a million different stories because it's just that's just one how these are. But for me, I know I was never part of the group that actually believed I was a man. I will
Uh,
tell you though, I never I would have. There's a good healthy group of people in the trans community who know that that's crazy because it's just like so contrary to like reason. Like I wouldn't be able to, which sounds funny that I'm even somebody who can talk about reason within that umbrella. I get it. I understand the irony, but there are levels of different. Yeah. So there's some people who fully think they could become a man. They'll talk about like all sorts of stuff, and that's more of the younger crowd. I really didn't fall into that. To me, I just wanted to go deeper into the identity. To me, not only that, but if I'm going to be honest with you, there's definitely aspects where if you play with that kind of stuff long enough, it can turn into. I'm trying to figure out a way to say this where it's like modest. You know how there's men who will transition, some because of identity issues, some because they just are deviants, sexual deviants. You know what I'm
mhm,
talking about? That can
mhm.
exist in women too. There can not. It's not really driven the same way, but it could be driven out of a need to, like, you need to experience what this feels like because there's something about like you're feeling something and you want to be something, and then there's something about it that turns from. It's very hard to describe. Um, and I often wonder how much should be talked about like publicly. So I'm trying to figure out how to say it best. But yeah, it could turn into deviancy essentially, and sort of an addiction towards that even.
What
Um,
the idea of being the opposite gender to serve some kind of sexual perversion, and not
yeah.
like
So
an innocent identity?
yeah, well, I think it could be both at the same time. So for me, yes, that. But I think I was in relationships with women who kept leaving me for men. So I looked enough like a man where I was with women who probably wanted to be with men, but who probably liked the emotional availability that I had as a woman.
Yep.
Obviously, I didn't know that at the time. I wasn't like aware of that, but I just noticed that I would end up getting left for this. Well, when you're left for something, you're like, the one thing I don't have is XYZ. You fill in the blanks. That becomes a very painful thing because you're like, I'm always ending up with people that just leave me. And they leave me for what seems to be this superficial thing that I don't have. So I'm going to go in and now all of a sudden you have this like crazy realization that you need to become this thing. And it's just
Hmm.
another lie to drive you further and further into this thing. But the core of it is this drive for love and belonging,
Yeah.
which is, it's very crazy actually, when you think about it.
Was
So.
the thing that you lacked? You felt that these women kept leaving you because you lacked it. Did you interpret that to mean I lack more masculinity, and if I had more of that, they'd stay with me, or I lacked the femininity that I lost so many years ago?
I was trying to go deeper into the masculinity. I felt like I was being left for the one thing I couldn't give them, which is the one thing innately I can't. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah. Bingo.
But it's weird because the funny thing is, even in like the gay world, there's so many people when you're look, it's a painful place to be regardless. Even if you don't go into the trans, even if you go into the gay, just to have the gay lifestyle, there's like this overwhelming like understanding that like you still desire and want things that you can't have. That's why now, like for instance, I wanted marriage, I wanted to have family, and there's something that always deeply saddened me to know that I couldn't have a child with somebody that I loved that would be the sum of both of us. That is a very real desire that nobody, and that now looking back, I'm thinking, wow, it's so obvious, why that hurt because it's actually a good God given desire and when it's in proper order.
Yeah.
Um,
And it can't be had by IVF and surrogacy. It's impossible.
Correct. But it's this other attempt now that becomes so much more distorted that now we create even more issues. We could destroy even more lives in this attempt to pursue the idol. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a big mess. But yeah, God does really write His law in our hearts, and that wasn't more evident until
Mhm.
I obviously made it to the church and then looked back and thought, wow, so those feelings were painful because like there was something there that was true. Hmm. That's a
I believe you've disclosed elsewhere that you had been diagnosed as substantially mentally ill. What was your DSM-5 designations? And did people look at you as someone who's really not going to get better?
Yeah, I was I don't think I've ever actually said this one out publicly, but I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder.
Hmm.
And so I was, in and out of mental health hospitals at the time when I was diagnosed with it though. Now they call it CPTSD. So take that for what you will.
So
CPTSD is
complex post-traumatic stress
post trauma.
disorder. So
Yeah.
so not the cluster B BPD diagnosis. They kind of moved away from that.
They went from that. Yeah, that's I haven't known in a long time because I've been to several. I mean, it's amazing that I've been to several therapists now, and I mean, they wouldn't. I don't even qualify for the diagnosis anymore. But that's how quickly God changed a lot of things initially
Right.
in my life. He left a lot to be healed,
Yeah.
but I don't take any medication. I just don't have any of those issues anymore, which is praise God.
So this is the crux of your whole story. Crux from the word cross, right? The
Yeah.
the the crucible. Did you have a rock bottom where the only
Mhm.
direction is up? Did you have a crisis where you just said enough? There's a saying attributed to Einstein. I don't think he said it, but insanity is trying the same thing over and over again,
Over and over.
expecting a different outcome. Did you hit a wall where that crying out to God with no games, no manipulation, no conditions, just help me? What was the moment of your turning?
Yeah, so I actually did hit a limit. Struggled with drug addiction for many years, in and out of rehabs, mental health hospital, all the stuff. I had finally decided that I was done with life. I was going to kill myself, and I had had that thought plenty of times before, but never this serious. Because this time I sat down and I wrote letters to everybody. I mean, I was in the most immeasurable pain you could ever possibly imagine, and I just could not do it anymore. And I thought at this point, if I would always compare myself to an animal. I'm thinking like we put animals down when they're suffering. It seems like, maybe we should do that to ourselves, which is really interesting now looking back. But so I had written a letter to everybody in my family that I was gonna do what I was gonna do, and then the night I was gonna do it, I have everything ready. I'm ready to go, and literally, I didn't even actually have enough and throw my hands up in the air and surrender until because I was fully ready to do it, and I was right about to do what I was about to do, and out of nowhere, I just get this like thought that just shoots through my head, and it's just like commands attention. It's just very like, here I am, and the thought was, what if the pain doesn't end here? What if it gets worse? And that thought is actually what struck me to a point where it terrified me. Like I actually hadn't considered that, like really honestly. But even just being presented with this idea, like stopped me in my tracks. It was like a deer in the headlights. And so in
Hmm.
that moment, I actually felt like I was almost being like suffocated. It was like I was terrified. I felt like my skin was getting smaller. Like not really, but like it was like a panic that I kind
Hmm. Hmm.
ever felt. And in that desperation, I dropped to my knees, and that was the first time I had ever asked God if He was real. I said, Lord, if you're real, please show me. I said that over and over, tears just streaming down my face, just like full guttural surrender. And I'm yelling at the top of my lungs, like, if you are real, you have to make it obvious. And I said, you have to really make it obvious though, because I'm very stupid. And I can't have like this, like maybe, maybe not. Like you see how desperate I am. Like, please show me. I ended up falling asleep that night, totally exhausted. And the next day I wake up and I have a little junk drawer next to my bed. Just, everyone has a junk drawer. You kind of assume what those look like. A bunch of random stuff. And right on top was sitting a rosary. And I'm pretty sure my brother had given it to me probably a couple years prior because he had converted already. but I didn't know anything about it. And what I mean is like, I don't remember the name of it. I don't remember what it's for. Actually, at the time, I didn't even remember he had given it to me. I only kind of surmise it now because we've had talks since where he was like, I'm pretty sure I gave that to you. But it was sitting around on top. And I remember when I saw it, it struck me, not because I knew what it was, but because I saw the crucifix. And if there's one thing that everybody knows in the world, whether you're religious or not, it is that everyone knows who Jesus is and everyone knows why, the big story, they know that he died for our sins. If you don't know anything, you know that. And I remembered that from being a kid. And I thought to myself, like, there was this, like, I'm remembering this conversation I had with God the night before. And I'm like, well, maybe I have to put a little effort into this too. And so I felt like I was being called to like figure out what this thing was. So I went on Google and I just started Googling. I don't even know how I arrived on it, but long story short, I ended up finding out that it was a rosary and that it was a prayer. And mind you, I know nothing about Our Lady, like at all when I'm even considering all this. Like I might have known at the point if I read something on Google that she was like, I don't know I know she's like Mother Mary. I know she's Jesus' mom, but I have no idea. The Queen of Heaven is like currently assisting me. And so
Yep.
I ended up finding the Sorrowful Mysteries. I wasn't even sure if I was saying it right, to be honest. I was just reading off the screen on the Google, and I'm kind of thumbing through the beads the best I can. And pretty much after I prayed the Sorrowful Mystery, and I prayed that one because that's the only one I really remembered. Remember, it was, he died on the cross for us. That was the one. And I'm not meditating or anything. It's not that deep. I'm just basically saying things. And I'm like, well, worst case, nothing happens. And after I'm done praying, I felt like a pretty intense peace. Mind you, you have to remember the day before I was trying to kill myself. And
Yeah.
I woke up in my suicide room, you know what I mean? Like with my plan still all around me. And that's when this rosary is prayed.
And fitting, Nancy, that you started with the Sorrowful Mysteries.
I understand that. Yes. Now. Absolutely. It was hindsight 2020 for sure. But yeah, absolutely. And so I prayed it. I did have a peace that came over me, but not one that I connected to anything per se. I just, actually in my first interview, somebody pointed out that I had finally had the ability to get out of bed because I was so depressed leading up to my depression. I couldn't get out of bed for days. It was the first time in my life I was completely bedridden. Like bills were not getting paid, work was not getting done. I was done. Like, I was really done.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I ended up praying. I decided I was going to pray this. I was going to continue to pray it like just once a day, until I figure out if God's real and if he even tells me. And by the way, I'm still thinking if I don't realize if he's not real, I'm still going to do this. I'm still going to kill myself. So what is it, like 3 days? I think it was a Wednesday. On Friday came around and I had this deep, I don't know, it's like an urge or a calling or a feeling. It was like something, it was almost like somebody tied an invisible rope around me and was like pulling me. Do you know what I mean? Like that, it didn't really, not really. I don't want to like misrepresent what happened, but it was like it's hard to explain. I mean, it was very clear what I was feeling. I was feeling I was being called to do something. So the feeling I was getting, the thought was just like, go see a priest. And I thought that was really interesting because I never grew up with priests. I actually specifically remember thinking out loud, and I've prayed the rosary now, 3 times, like once a day till this happened, or twice maybe. Anyway, I remember thinking out loud, like, why not a pastor?
Yeah.
Or a priest, So I ended up calling my brother, or I texted him rather, and I asked him, because I don't know where Catholic churches are, So I texted him and I just said, hey, what parish you go to? And he said,
a question you would have asked him, 100 times in the past, of course.
Yeah, right. And that was actually really hard for me to ask him because I didn't want any of my family knowing any of this that was going on because I didn't want the pressure. I didn't want them to think I was joining the church.
Yeah.
Mind you, this is like 2 days into this. I am not somebody who was, I didn't come to the church because I read my way in. This was all very quick. And so anyway, he told me where he went. And then I called them and I said, I need to talk to a priest. And they had a priest call me back. And this priest, I came in that night, and mind you, I have no idea what I'm going to say to this priest. I really don't. I'm not, this is where I feel like I'm being pulled in a direction, but I'm not always sure what the next step, what's happening, because I'm not really sure what I'm going to ask this guy. So I get there, mind you, I look like I'm at a pride parade. Like my hair has taken like 2.5 years now to grow, which kind of looks crazy right now, but it's taken a long time. I had like a shaved head, I look like I belong on a pride parade. I'm very covered in tattoos, at piercings, everything. And you can imagine a traditional priest looking at me. He was very, very sweet. And I think looking back now, he was like trying to figure out how to not scare me away. Which is funny.
That's good.
Here I am thinking I'm going to scare him. But anyway, I said, I don't know why I'm here. I need to talk to you, but I just want to know, like, if God's real. Of course, obviously he's going to tell me God's real. We ended up talking for I want to say like an hour and a half, 2 hours. And he told me about catechism at the end. He went through he was very frank. He didn't sugarcoat anything. I said, well, Father, I'm gay. So I don't know. I don't think I belong in this place. And he taught me the teaching that the church had on the, sexuality and identity and things like that. And oddly, this is totally grace because I was in a place to hear it. He I was pulled to his doorstep. He told me without flinching, and the funny thing is I love this too, because he didn't flinch whatsoever. And he didn't overthink how to deliver the truth. I was on his doorstep. I asked a question. He answered the question. It's very simple. And I love that.
Well, that's the key, that the Holy Spirit is behind this kind of mysterious magnetization to a priest and not a pastor, because this could have had a very different ending to the story if you had ended up on the doorstep of I don't know, James Martin SJ.
Yep. I actually have written about that before, just and only because it's I hate that some people end up on his doorstep, especially because I know that pain where some of them are coming from. So anyway, we pray for them. So anyway,
yeah, go ahead.
So we're talking. He ends up bringing up catechism. I think he's making up language now, and I have never heard of the word catechism in my life. And he explained that it was them taking us through the church. And I said, Father, I don't want to become Catholic. That's literally not why I'm here. I said, I'm so sorry if I've wasted your time, but that's not why I'm here. I just want to know if God was real. And so I ended up leaving. He was very gracious, and I ended up leaving, whatever. So I'm still praying the rosary, and a couple more days go by, and it's Sunday morning, early morning. It's around 3 a.m. And I only know that because it was Saturday. I drive for Uber. I used to drive for Uber, and the bars would close at 2 a.m. So I would get home about 3 a.m, early Sunday morning after that. So I'm praying. I prayed my rosary once again a day until that day. And then about 3 a.m, right as I'm getting home from driving for Uber, I get this overwhelming feeling again, that same pull to go see a priest. But this time it said, I was like, I need to go see a mass. And I thought, wow, why do I have to go see a mass? But I didn't question it. It was strong, though. I couldn't just sleep on it. That was the crazy thing. So I went online to the same parish, and I looked up the mass time. Thankfully, they're the only mass in all of Sacramento who has an updated website. So I learned that much later, apparently. But that's
it's a miracle in itself. An updated parish website. Wow.
Yeah, well, go figure. Turns out my priest runs a tight ship, so I appreciate that. So anyway, I saw they had a 7 a.m. mass, and I thought, well, if I don't go to the first one, I'm afraid this moment will pass, and I won't feel as strongly that I need to do this if more time goes on. So I decided I was going to stay up. I'm just going to stay awake, and I'm going to go to the first one, and I can come home and crash out afterwards and sleep during the day. So I do that, and I get to the parish. And mind you, the second I get there, it's now I didn't know this at the time. I just thought I was terrified. I was utterly terrified to be there. All of a sudden I'm getting these intrusive thoughts, you don't belong here. These people are going to hate you, run for the hills, get out of here. And it was loud. My head felt very loud. And just to be clear, I'm not schizophrenic, so I wasn't audibly hearing anything. It was
your thought bubble is, hey, I'm not interested in becoming Catholic. That's not why I'm at 7 a.m. mass. I swear.
Yeah, exactly. No. And so, but then I had this other kind of calming guiding voice. And I would now say that that was probably more of my guardian angel if I had to discern against the spirits and stuff.
Hmm.
But yeah, so it was this other calming sort of like voice in my head that was just like, keep walking, keep walking. And so eventually I made it to the parish doors, and I, mind you, once again, look like I belong at a pride parade. I mean, you walk into a Latin mass community, it's just very culturally different. I've never experienced anything like that in my life. I often joke that I felt like I walked into an episode of like Little House on the Prairie,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
which I find very sweet now. But at the time, I didn't know what was going on, and I ended up sitting in the very back row. I remember the craziest, like I just did. I was so afraid that if people saw me, they would like run me out, that they would know I didn't belong there, or whatever it was, you know. And so I'm like sitting in the back. I'm not even really sitting in the pews. I'm sitting. There's like a little bench right next to the door, so it's
Yeah.
like a good escape route if I had
Yeah,
to
yeah, you
leave.
have to get out of Dodge because of the judge
Yeah.
you're set. Yeah.
And so I'm looking in enough to where I can see everything, but and I'm about to leave. Like I'm feeling like so anxious, so terrified. And I'm like, this is like a waste. I just need to get out of here. And before I know it, I caught the gaze of this little red candle at the front. It was hanging up in the very front. And man, this candle just like captivated me. Like when I put my eyes on it, I did not look away. Like I couldn't. I literally couldn't. And all I could hear in my head was keep looking at me, keep looking at me. And that was the candle. Like that's what I saw it as. So I just kept it, and I felt like peaceful. Like where there was fear, I just felt like this like, and it was the only thing that kept me there. I was about to bolt out the door, and all of a sudden I hear this. Mind you, I have no idea where in the mass we are. I have no idea what's happening anyway. It's in Latin. I don't even know it's in Latin
Latin,
because that's
yeah.
how little I
Did
know
you
about
feel
this.
did you feel like you'd landed on Mars and the Martians are speaking Marshlandia? Were you
Yeah.
lost, or did it make a kind of sense because of how ordered it was and how peaceful the atmosphere was? Was that a
No,
blessing
I
or a
knew
blessing?
something. I knew something was holy. That's
Mm.
I often will say that. Like, and I wouldn't. I may not have used that language at the time, um, because holy that wasn't in my vernacular. Like what?
Yeah.
But I would have said that something. Look, yes, I would say now I would describe it as something felt very ordered, whereas I was very disordered, and that's why I was terrified. It kind of reminds me of when Adam and Eve were in the garden and they cover up and they're scared to be seen by God, so they cover up. That's how I felt. I was
Yeah.
scared to be seen by the people around, and then he's like, "Who told you you were naked?" And that's
Hmm.
how
Hmm.
that's how it felt in hindsight, but. So anyway, this I'm looking at this candle, and out of nowhere, I hear an organ play. And the second I hear this organ play, it was like an avalanche of emotion just like swooped over me, and I have not felt a more intense and more radical love in my entire life than in that moment. It was like I was literally being held, and I just broke down. So here I am, like wanting to be completely anonymous in the back of the mass, and now I'm weeping, and I cannot stop it. Like I'm plugging my nose, like I'm doing everything in my power to not be seen. It is not possible. And
Hmm.
and that was the moment. And from that point on, that's when I realized, oh, like God answered my question 5 days ago. I had a question. I asked him to make it very obvious for me. And he gave me his mother, and his mother, walked me right back into the, house of the Lord. So,
Hmm. And that emotional tsunami of consolation and comfort, that was the answer to the prayer. That was the realness of God manifest for you for the first time, correct?
yeah. Well, and that love, because I've thought about it so much, like since it happened, which is, it was on March 19th, by the way, 2023, which is another thing that blew my mind because I didn't know anything about feast days. I don't know anything about any of the depth of of our faith. I know nothing about it, and it was like much later that I even found out through having a text thread that it was on March 19th, 2023, which is Feast Day of St. Joseph. So
Yeah,
you're telling me
Saint
the whole
Joseph.
entire Holy Family was involved in this?
Hmm.
Like, give me a break. This is like, you can't make this up. And I was just like blown away by that. And the love that I felt, the reason it healed, I think, so much, he doesn't heal us all the way because obviously we understand that our faith is supposed to, love is a choice. It's, it's our and it can only be real if we choose to suffer for it, you know what I mean? And choose
Hmm.
to willing to do what's good versus just, loving him for the consolations or, whatever that may be, like true love. But the
Yeah,
love that
that's a really important thing you just said, Nancy. The importance of seeking the God of consolations, not the consolations of God.
right. Yeah. And I think that day, what changed me so dramatically, and why it had such is because like it was almost like for a second he had finally told me what I've been just wanting. The answer, the question I didn't realize, I didn't know how to articulate my entire life, but that kind of set the narrative for my entire life, and that is when you've created an identity, or when you at least think that you've had to create your identity from a very young age, and you've protected that at all costs, right? To be shown that you don't have to do that, you already had a name. You
Hmm.
know, you already have an identity. You already have a nature. I mean, geez Louise, it's like to somebody who's been blind for so long, it's just such a it's funny because like to other people are like, yeah, we know we've been, we know this, like we've been following God for a while now. But like for somebody like me, that was like it was like leveling. And
Yeah.
yeah, and it satisfied that probably that, that urge that I had been feeling the entire time that I was trying to, fill the void with all these other things, and it was like all of a sudden they were just so useless. And instantly, like, I mean, I knew that instantly. I didn't know how to articulate it yet, probably, but I knew instantly that I was made for this. I was made for this love. Like, I wanted that. And whatever hard truths I'd come in contact with, I was willing to accept those prior to even knowing what they were.
So this is what you've been searching for all along, and found it in fits and starts and imperfectly, and backfires with all the, the sexual behavior and the drugs and the distraction, shiny metal objects. Here, you're able to be still and just
Mhm.
kind of receive it. Because
Yeah.
we all do this, right? We want to be the instigator. We want to be the one that heals ourselves. We want to, like Peter, he wants to have a little sponge bath before our Lord washes him. No, it doesn't work that way. You have to receive
Yeah.
it. Just say yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah. And
got through the
also,
mass.
what's that?
You got through the mass.
I did get through the mass, and here's the other great thing is that God didn't leave me alone in that moment. I had 3 women. Remember, this is like a parish I thought would run me out of town. I had 3 lovely women. One came and sat with me as I wept. She didn't say anything. It kind of like reminded me. I've told her since, because now she's one of my best friends. I've told her since that like it was very Marian. It was very much like what I imagine. Like she just sat there with me. Sometimes it almost feels like a disservice to try to placate somebody who's deeply in the midst of something very real.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's almost the presence that is more powerful, and without words. And for her to come and just sit with me, allow me to still be consumed by whatever was going on, put her hand on my back and just be present with me was like I never also experienced that kind of friendship. That like in that split second, that was like a level of like what was that even like? Because you don't get that kind of stuff really out in the real world. Everybody's like your friend because they're also trying to survive. We just use each other to survive,
Mhm.
and so there's really like we try to love well. It's not like we're evil in the sense of like intentions per se, but past hell's obviously paved many good intentions. But objectively, we live evil lives because we don't know what the truth is, or we deny the truth outright.
Mhm. Mhm.
Anyways, and then I had several women come, and yeah, after that, I basically started catechism the very next week. So I actually called Father back. And I was like, I guess I actually do want to become Catholic. And he was like, what? Changed. And I didn't actually like really tell anybody what was going on. I told my brother because I honestly thought people would think I was insane. You have to try to put yourself in my brain as somebody from my background having this kind of experience. I'm not understanding that people in this building believe this isn't going to be lost on them and God can do something like this.
Yep.
I'm thinking it's like magic. Not really yet, but like I have no context. I'm like, what was that? I
And the
know it's God,
speed
but
of
what
it.
does it mean?
The speed of it, Nancy. It's not like, well, there were several months where I found little books and I read this and I had this little insight in prayer. You just got the 2x4 by the side of the head treatment. It sounds like because you were open to it, and that was your moment.
Yeah. I mean, 5 days, that's where a lot of people, they think from my past anyway, will say, that I'm brainwashed now, and I understand. It's like, I mean, yeah, I understand because I know how their brain works, and I understand now where I come from, and it's almost an incomprehensible shift. Yeah, I wish they did understand that it was so quickly for a reason. Like, if they knew what the cause was, like, so. But even it takes grace to
Yeah.
hear those words.
Yep.
So
In your case, it wasn't vitamins and supplements and exercise. It was ER. It was like
yeah,
emergency surgery. And
yeah,
now, at this
that's,
point, had you been living under a different identity? Did you have a name change at that point when you walked into that church? Can you
yeah,
tell
not
us more about
legally.
that? Yeah,
Yeah,
but
I was
just
going by the name.
socially.
Socially, yeah, I had changed my name. I was working for Starbucks at the time, and they're very woke, and so like they only ever knew me as, excuse me, Roman. So if like you had met me for the first time, you would never know my dead name.
Right.
So I
So
called
Roman was on
myself.
your name tag.
Yeah, I have actually.
Okay.
Yeah, Roman was my name tag. It was on my paperwork as the preferred name. I only got my legal name put on like paychecks and stuff for like banking reasons, but that was
Yeah.
stuff that was privately just sent to me.
Kind
All
of
my other stuff.
kind of interesting for a Catholic now to pick Roman.
So we talk about that all the time. And you want to hear something that's funny, even more funny? God definitely has a sense of humor. So yes, I called myself Roman, and now I'm a Roman Catholic. Haha. And then also my name when I gave my when I decided to go back by the name that my parents had given to me. My name translates is from Anne, so Saint Anne, so Our Lady's mother, and
Lady's
her
mother.
name Anne translates into grace, which is undeserved favor. I mean, tell
Yeah.
me that doesn't fit. It's
Yeah.
insane.
Beautiful.
So yeah, the name thing has definitely been something we've laughed about.
I suppose the next Mount Everest, at least at the time, would have been prepping for a good general confession. Now, you and I have
Yeah.
not pre-rehearsed anything. I'm just going off what your
No.
story is.
Yeah.
Were you especially terrified of confession?
You know, I I had moments, but I wasn't. I mean, I was so protected through this whole process. It's not that I didn't have moments of fear, because I was also going through, just so you're kind of aware, because you haven't talked with I was getting heavily demonically attacked. So severely, I was getting like attacked in my sleep, and so I was having the priests were helping me. Like I'd have to keep track of stuff going on. I don't want to speak too much about it publicly, but
Hmm.
it was no small thing. And so I definitely opened some doors because I also had played with tarot cards and stuff like that when
Yep.
I was very new agey, and I had things that I saw when I was a kid. So I kind of, maybe it's the same thing, maybe it's not. I don't really know, but upon saying yes to the church, as in I wasn't in the church yet, so I couldn't have the sacraments. Obviously, I had just started catechism, and I was just for like 4 months. I was just like getting like brutally, and it was terrifying. And then it wasn't, because I started understanding the nature of like the spiritual warfare and stuff.
So
I
to,
just
to, to summarize this for people for whom this is new, you were attacked with distractions, pointed fears, like spiritual vexations, without going into details because we don't want to throw attention at the loser. We want to focus on the victor.
correct.
Did you think it was an attempt to sabotage your return and just keep you in as many chains as possible for as long as possible?
I think it was, probably. I didn't. I would say this though. What was really interesting about it, I think that they were mad at me. I think that I think it becomes in those attacks that are overt, you become really aware that you had a master before, because like even neutrality is you working for somebody. And in the world we live in now, it's like if you don't choose God, you're still making a choice, and
Yeah.
even if you don't know it. And so I realized how I had, it's kind of like I was owned. And now that I wasn't anymore. But here's the thing, it actually did the opposite effect. And I only say that because I wanted to actually say this, because you asked me if confession was going to be hard. No, because when I was going through this period, it intensely intensified my faith in God. Because
Hmm.
I mean, think about it. When you're like, whoa, this stuff is real. Like this is real. Like you can't. There's no evidence. Like now I know, and I'm
Hmm.
very clear that I don't want that side. So it's like, do with me what you want. I'm going in that. The priest isn't scarier than me. What? yeah, I mean, he could probably assume most of the what I'm going to tell him anyway. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
and I had a really good priest. I mean, he was just perfectly what God, God will put the right priest in front of you
Hmm.
under the right circumstances, and he did that for me. So I'm grateful for that.
And was that sacramental encounter the beginning of the end of all the vexations and the infiltrations and the kind of diabolical attempts to trip you up? Did that end or greatly diminish after that?
Greatly diminished, yeah. No, I mean, it greatly diminished with the rosary, daily rosary.
Mm.
Long before I could ever partake in the sacraments. I was doing like, I had sacramentals like, holy water. I had to really get regimented with my prayer schedule, get on something, very, it was just like a lot of like, because I really didn't have any virtue. I had no virtue is just a formed habit. I didn't have any good habits. So I think that they loved the disorder, and I was very disordered. They were trying to keep me in that disorder, the sort of place of like running and chasing my tail. So I think the priests really helped me kind of develop some sense of normalcy,
Yeah.
and I had to really grow in that. And so once I started doing that, but it was really the rosary that initially stopped it. Now, spiritual warfare always tries to rear its ugly head. I don't think that really fully goes away.
Yeah.
But sacraments deeply help. I mean, confession is my favorite sacrament to this day because it's just freedom.
Yeah. It does make sense that when you take discipleship seriously and you let yourself be loved by Jesus Christ and you give yourself to him, your life to him, then you become a person of interest to the enemy. So it makes sense. Bishop Sheen, my spiritual father, I know you love Bishop Sheen as well. He would say, don't mock the Gospels because they speak of Satan as real. The devil places more demons in the hallways of seminaries than he does in cat houses because
Right.
at that level that they're already his.
Yeah.
It's when you start to say yes to Christ that the
Right.
forces of Antichrist begin to try to infiltrate and
Yeah, and in
distract.
that hand, it's actually kind of an honor. So it's like, plus,
Hmm.
like, there is no like, just to, because I'd like to, I don't like. Some people get really freaked out by this kind of stuff, but it's like I just like to remind people there is no actual like comparison to God and like the devil. Like,
Yeah,
it's not like a one versus one. No, no, no.
yeah.
Like,
This is one of my favorite topics. I'll just let you go on why it's not a fair fight. It's not Christ on one side of the coin, the devil on the other side of the coin. Who's going to win? Who'll win the arm
yeah,
wrestle?
I think sometimes it's sometimes people see it as like a one versus one. It's like, no, the first of all, it's already been one. So there's that. And two, the devil is a creation of the creator. Like, he didn't, he was the most beautiful angel. So he can't actually create anything. I mean, he just inverses everything. He's so, it's almost, sorry, I can go off on this, but yeah, I mean, there is no comparison. God can just like, smush. I mean, if anything, a lot of times when we experience evil, it's because God is permitting it for our own good, to help us root out in ourselves, because it's like being put through a furnace where all the dead ends are sort of pulled off of you. There's probably
Hmm.
better analogies, but for the sake of not having any prepared, that
Yeah,
would probably be the best one.
that's good. I,
But
that's
yeah,
good.
so
I'm the analogy king myself. I endorse that message. Very good.
thank you.
So, did you have some kind of ceremony, or did you formally renounce the Roman identity and all of it? Did you have any kind of disattachment to all the darkness that had you gripped?
Formal, no. I mean, I was confirmed into the Catholic faith. I was
Hmm.
received the sacraments, and it is my full experience and opinion that the sacraments are sufficient. God doesn't mess around.
Hmm.
He says, "This is, I give you my body. I give you, confession." I mean, they say confession is like an exorcism in itself,
Yeah.
and that's like, Our Lady gave us the rosary. It's like we have so much like weapon. There's some people who probably need a little bit more of the church's manpower, so to speak, when it comes to certain things, because there's different levels of stuff that I don't know enough about to talk eloquently
Hmm.
about it, so I won't. But
Yeah.
like for me, no, I had to go. I went through some trying stuff, and then thankfully the sacraments of the church have been sufficient, and so I have great faith in them.
If only the clinician who diagnosed you with X, Y, or Z could see you now, because this seems like an old school healing where you
Yeah.
were suffering. There was diabolical elements involved. And a lot of it was rooted in the fact that you were not connected with the source of life, with the God and Father of the universe who made you out of nothing. And so once you
Right.
surrender to that, with that came all the healing, including mental health healing. Is
Yeah.
that a fair summary?
Isn't that amazing? Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I've
it is.
often wondered because I don't know much about this, but I've heard like talk about like how even the darker entities can like mimic even possibly what is it called, mental illness. So I
Hmm.
mean, mental illness, whether you have it, whether it's just being that you've broken your will so often that you fall. I don't know. It is weird, but it's funny because it's real when every single person in your life see something different instantly. If you were to ask my brother, my mother, people who even disagree with each other, they would say that it was the one thing was like you were not. It was like something. It was wild. I don't know how to explain it, but I
You
wish
have
I could just like play it
plenty of
for
before and after photos, right? Because the camera doesn't
I
lie in a
do.
way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I absolutely do.
Because just looking at you now and listening to you, I'm finding it hard to believe that that's how you look like.
You see my picture?
Only one. I thought, is this AI? What am I seeing here? No way.
Oh no, we live in the era of AI. People are gonna think it's no. It's real. Yeah, they I only posted several. I posted a couple pretty. Those aren't even my worst pictures, but I try to be thoughtful about what I post, but
Right.
just so people can see the distinction. Because I was on meth. You know what I mean? We don't look good on meth.
On meth, everybody looks the same on meth. Yeah, it's true. If you
Yeah,
look at, it's true. There's
that's
like a
true.
zombie
There's a
thing
very
about it.
distinct look.
Well,
Mhm.
thanks be to God, you got up and out of all of that. Are you in touch with the former gay friends that used to be part of your the crew that you ran with? Have you had any contact with with them post conversion, post reversion?
Some I have actually. I've had a few, not necessarily gay friends, but people. Like I said, I didn't have a ton of gay friends. I was not opposed to them, but I wasn't like running in like LGBT plus circles only. So a lot of the friends that co-signed they had no issue with my being whatever. I actually just had someone call me the other day who they said they were on their way to becoming. They had been feeling called to the Catholic Church.
Hmm.
Mind you, we had gone to rehab together. We've see each other in another life. Very different life than we had the conversation. She said, I was asking God for a sign, and then all of a sudden I saw your video, and I almost did not believe because I mean I look very different than I did
Yep.
back then.
Hmm.
I'm just a completely different person, just even physically by look. And
Hmm.
she ended up having my old phone number, and that's actually why I kept my phone number the same in case people want to reach out. The short answer is not a lot of people, and here's why. It's not because it's not by design. I actually have plans that are under wraps that I won't announce right now to how to get back into a certain crowd to help speak. But I
Hmm.
had been pulled away from a lot of my friends in 2020 on the
Uh,
and that was COVID, but I lived alone because I was just getting out of a bad breakup and I was going through a lot of heartbreak. So in a weird way, I think God pulled me out of like major groups that were influencing me 2 years prior to my conversion and my desperation. So by the time COVID was over and I was really desperate, I didn't really have any friends anymore.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Because like
Sure.
we had all isolated for so long, I wasn't going to the bars anymore. I wasn't going to a club, and most of my friends at that point were just friends that you realize you're friends with them just because you go out every weekend, like they do, But the ones that matter to me, yes, those people, they have loved me through this, which is really awesome. Because there's a couple of them. There's one in particular that I was very worried he would jump ship because he's been one of my best friends for like a very long time, and we've been through the ringer. But he was very gracious. So
Well, it's
um,
the proof's in the pudding, right? You're happy, you're vibrant, you're off the drugs, you're out of the self harm zone. And you went from wanting to end yourself, taking yourself out completely. 5 days later, sobbing in the back of the church, looking at the monstrance candle. That's a pretty quick
yeah,
rescue.
yeah, absolutely.
What's the next
So
step, Nancy? Do you have a book in you? Are you planning? Do you speak? Because I'm. We can talk off the air. This is you're tapping into something deep and wide. The need out there to resolve confusion and help people without labeling them. Just know that there's a source of truth and goodness and love, the love we're all looking for. It's available for the
absolutely.
asking. So what's your next chapter?
I don't have a fully fledged plan. I work right now. I serve as the director of operations for Eternal Christendom, my brother's apostolate. So I'm
Hmm.
super blessed to be able to help him. It's a dream come true to wake up every day and work as part of the mission. To get to work
Yeah.
on behalf of the church.
Well, tell us about the
Um,
mission. I'll be speaking with this is Joshua Charles, your brother. Tell us about Eternal Christendom. Maybe that's a good .com, the shortest distance between people listening and watching now and
yeah.
what you guys do. Tell us more.
Well, my brother basically, this is mostly his brainchild. He's spent many years studying the church fathers. It's part of his conversion story, and essentially, he started Eternal Christendom, which is where we're trying to basically digitalize. There's probably a better way to put it, but in many ways, we're trying to digitalize a lot of ancient lost texts that are behind big paywalls. And we're trying to bring it back to the forward, but doing it all like for free, hopefully, so people can have access. And we have like study banks right now, and like a lot of people, a lot of even like priests will use our study banks and stuff like that to. We have quote archives that quote all the church father stuff, and we have over like 1.5 million words of content right now. It's all free. You just go to there, and then we have a podcast. We basically have 5 different phases we want to go in. We're in phase 1 right now, which is building our podcast. So we just crossed 21,000 subscribers. Praise God. So I
Great.
basically he does most of the stuff. I just kind of help him out with more of the business back end of the stuff. So we do that. But I do speak here and there when I'm asked. And I have a book, if God wills it, in me. I do love writing. It's one of my favorite things to do. And people have asked many times if I'm going to write a book, but I still feel like, sometimes you don't feel like it's not right. It's not the right time per se. And I feel like that right now. I feel like I'm learning too much to,
Yeah.
I write, so it may become part of a bigger thing later, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'm,
You maybe have it germinate like the waters over the deep before creation.
yeah,
Makes
yeah.
sense. So
So
eternalchristendom.com.
yeah, that's right. If you want to go there, find us and you can see everything we're working on. And yeah, that's
Well, Nancy Charles, it's been an honor. I've learned a lot today, and I really appreciate your time and your willingness and courage to say yes to being asked the same questions about difficult chapters of your life. And I know your motivation for doing it, and I know this episode is going to have a big feedback. So thank you for your time.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on, Patrick. Appreciate it.
This is the Patrick Coffin Show. Be a saint. What else is there?